Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, August 27th. Let's hop in. Yeah, again, starting a little bit later than I'd like. Mostly I could say I was up late last night working on a side project that required me to sit in a different chair for far too long, and it just wrecked my back. Like, I am in so much pain right now. It's like sitting in chairs for like 8 hours a day, like most people can do in school and work, is ridiculously not doable for me in my back anymore. It is shocking how bad this is. Here we can also see I did not really succeed well on anything, and I don't really have anything to reroll. I guess I could try and reroll this. It's a 40, but I might get a 20 or 30 if I did. I mean, I think at a certain point, just trying to get more overlap in general probably is the goal. If we could get 3 Forestcraft or Bloodcraft victories, then we could switch over to some more victories. Odds of getting 7 victories, though, fairly low. I did play a little bit of Binding of Isaac Rebirth, but not a lot. If anything, playing on normal, I am now being able to get all the way to the Cathedral and Isaac fairly consistently. And I have like 3 more challenges. A lot of the challenges I'm just doing off screen and then coming back when I'm about to beat the boss, because challenges are just so awkward anyways. But the increasing limiting factor as far as unlocking something seems to either be the fact that I'm not doing enough regular runs to put in coins in the donation machine, or to die potentially 100 times, which is what I think one of the items is required. I also need to unlock the Lost, which I suppose at that point, if I did unlock the Lost, I could then have a great excuse to die 100 times, since the Lost is a one-hit kill secret character anyways. Yeah, and even in Repentance, there's a section where you kind of play as the Lost, as a character, for a brief second, and even then when you take damage you don't actually die. So yeah, I think Repentance fixes a lot more than I really realized. And so I'm still trying to e-beg, basically trying to get people to gift me Repentance DLC, Afterbirth, and Afterbirth Plus DLC for Binding of Isaac Rebirth. That way I could cover the game a little bit better. I guess what we could do is we could come over here and see if we just played default fairy deck instead of the one I built. So once again, I'm, I guess, perpetually behind, since I spent all yesterday on a side project, and I have more side projects still. I have yet to get back to the irrigation system project, which hopefully works. Like, I'm real tired of failing on that one. I have like a bookshelf I need to put together. My server I haven't touched in a very long time, and I could definitely use some improvements and get that working. So, yeah. Lots of things to do. I've been kind of watching a lot of TV lately too, which definitely don't have time to watch TV. Let's see. It's a little premature to play that, but I guess we'll do that. So yeah, as usual, we'll want to try and rush through the news today on a Friday. Fridays tend to be lesser viewed anyways. And maybe we'll do some follow list cleanup, but highly unlikely to. Like, pretty much there has to be not only no event happening, what there has to be is an event about to happen before a live stream. Something that actually actively reduces the number of announcements and video games coming out on Steam. So right before E3, right before Gamescom, right before maybe Tokyo Game Show a little bit, but probably not even that much. And I don't know if there's any other events that are even big enough to create a slowdown in news. And it doesn't really affect people that are just putting out garbage games on Steam, because they will continuously do that regardless. This and this. And then, do we evolve that? So yeah, we have a game on Steam here called The Shape of Time, which looks like nothing. Just ridiculous shapes, artistic ideas. In a lot of ways, I don't know how to criticize. As a fan who feels like they can criticize a lot of shapes and art pieces, I don't know how to criticize something that is going to be so abstract like this. I guess abstract is the right word, where it's just shapes upon shapes upon shapes. I would almost feel like I would need to pull out a golden triangle or something to, like a golden ratio French curve type assistance to see if the shapes and the curves were of good form. Watching it in action, where you see it is basically a image that is getting 2D slices taken out through motion, I think that's probably even worse. Like, that really does make it feel like somebody is just showing off a effect they figured out. And I could definitely see, I could definitely see a case where somebody just buys some pre-bought animations and then tweaks the code just ever so slightly to make those pre-part animations look the way they do in that. On the other hand, it is a free-to-play game. It supports French full-length audio and English interface and subtitles, whatever that really means. It doesn't require VR, so if it was an attempt to make money, it kind of failed. If anything, it just kind of feels like it's a portfolio project for some artist who decided to put it on Steam. And I could definitely see artists spending $100, which is basically nothing, to put their 3D renders on something like Steam. And arguably, Steam and Valve should curate that either into a new category or not allow it at all. Steam has already said they really don't want movies unless the movies are directly connected and related to a game. So something like the Dead Space animated movies makes sense to be on Steam, whereas just Casablanca doesn't really make sense. Let's see. Do this, do this, do this. Evolve here.
I won't let you get away.
So sparkly. Yeah.
Hit that, I guess.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
And then the turn. I could definitely see an argument to the idea of Steam also being a platform for movies and music. That is basically what the Google Play Store and the iTunes App Store all became. I wouldn't, but I could also see an argument for specializing specifically in video games and not going into those other venues. And if anything, it does inspire a small bit of confidence in Steam and Valve that they are at least slightly focused on video games and catering their experience for video gamers instead of just trying to shift something like G4 TV into a channel that just shows cops and cheaters all the time to get a larger market share. Moving on, we have Midnight Calling, Valeria Collector's Edition. $8.99, English full audio from Big Fish Game, another hidden object game. Here we have Dream Girls, which was tagged sexual content and nudity, so I'll make sure there's nothing there. It's another square puzzle game with anthropomorphic anime girls. And yeah, so you have a cowgirl, you have a ram / sheep girl, you have what is probably a wolf girl, would be my guess, or snow leopard girl maybe. Yeah, you have a monkey, which the danger of racism here, the more tanned anime girl is the monkey, but whatever, monkeys are brown. The actual puzzles though, kind of nothing. So yeah, not really anything special other than the fact that it once again resets the clock as far as games that seem to have adult content in it. It's 84 cents, English, Chinese, and Russian. It does have an 18 plus adult only content DLC, so it is censored by default with the patch to uncensor, which, yeah, okay, that makes sense. The CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, retweeted Rhett and Link, who are doing an all-day charity live stream on September 22nd. She pretty much hasn't promoted any small-time or even medium YouTuber in the entire history of me following her. And then for the vast majority of her time, she doesn't seem to post anything about YouTube at all, which would be kind of fair if you thought she was just working hard in the background to make YouTube actually work and be successful. Arguably, though, I would say that's not the case at all, because YouTube, under her leadership, or what seems to be frankly a lack of leadership and a disinterest in actually doing a job, in favor of just rubbing elbows with the rich and famous. But yeah, amongst her leadership, YouTube has not become a better place for creative people. And yeah, I was watching, I believe it's How to Cook That on YouTube, where it is a growing in success. Maybe she's an independent chef, but maybe she's not. I wouldn't be surprised if her channel actually has a lot of secret support from some production company, because almost all the successful channels actually are designed to look like they're being run by one or two people, and when there's really a production company of 100 people and millions of dollars behind them. But the point that the main lady on How to Cook That made is, because the YouTube videos of cooking weird things that don't really work get dislikes and get a lot of people to comment that they're fake, the fake recipes, and sometimes the recipes are very dangerous. Because they get a lot of engagement, and because YouTube is all about engagement, they get promoted a lot more, which is squeezing out the small, actually creative chefs out there who are creating new food hacks and things like that. And even the small creators, when they do create a new food hack, it's just incredibly easy for the bigger, more successful, because of the algorithm, channels to simply steal that idea without spending any of the time and energy doing the research and investigating it or being creative. But it creates a even growing issue in that, because you now have less actual creative people on YouTube, because they've given up and been squashed out of the limelight, so they can't get any views. It means now there's even less actual working food hacks for the big channels, the fake food hack channels, to steal. So now they are just making more and more increasingly ridiculous food hacks and increasingly ridiculous videos, and just they've poisoned the well effectively on the entire category of YouTube. And that's not just food hacks, that's kind of true for a lot of content on YouTube. What it really screams is that we need either a YouTube for indies, or just some different algorithm. But the idea of a YouTube for indies, where if you got 1 million subscribers, you get either graduated or kicked off the platform and moved to a different platform completely, would be interesting. But how do you manage that? How do you manage 1 billion indie people who are making 1 or 2 videos in their entire life versus one person who has 1 billion views who's making maybe 100 videos? It's way easier to manage the one person and get them to follow the rules or do what you want them to do. And at a certain level, that is the truth of YouTube. Is it's not just about them highlighting the best content creators, it's about them controlling the narrative, whatever the narrative is about.
I walk my own path. Just don't.
I'm home.
Hey, let's play. Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of has nothing to do with anything other than to say I needed a reason to vent once again about YouTube, I guess. I didn't realize I needed that, but yeah, once I started talking, it does. Yeah, YouTube still kind of sucks. Unfortunately, none of the spin-off shows or providers have really succeeded either. I know I tried a couple of them, and I know I have some things that are just like automatically uploading to some other services, but I don't log into those services. I have no idea how many views I'm getting on something. Maybe I'm on like DTube, maybe that's a porn site, I don't even know. I know I tried a couple of them, if they were automated. For a while there, I had automated uploads from YouTube to Twitch. Twitch never got anywhere with that. Like, best case scenario I can imagine is that at some point the at some point there will be a scenario where
Light upon the land. Don't hurt me.
yeah, what am I trying to say? Yeah, my best hope is maybe at some point there'll be a scenario where the kids just are tired of being on YouTube and they'll decide to create and move their audience to a different service. And as stupid as it may be, I guess I would jump over to that new service. But then kids are pretty fickle and jump from service to service anyways, and I'm not sure kids want to watch my content either. I suppose if all the kids went to a different service, and by kids in this case I mean anyone who is from birth to about 14, 16 years old, if they all left YouTube en masse to a new service, it might drastically change the audience and who is actually watching videos on YouTube, to the point where the algorithm might quickly shift into showing more intelligent content or more mature content, or at least adult targeted content. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Iraq War, which, yeah, I don't really see a lot here that makes this feel like this is specifically an Iraqi war or an Iraq war. Yeah.
Did you send this
Like
breed?
dark buildings that look very much just like asset flips. That does not really strike me as any noticeable buildings that would be in Iraq. And then you're seeing cars and trucks that just kind of look like asset flips. $17.99. It's supposed to be taking place in Baghdad 2003. I kind of disbelieve that this dark vision is supposed to be Baghdad. Yeah, to me it just seems like it's a low effort asset flip game that has also tried to sell itself on somewhat politically inflammatory subjects, but I don't know how politically inflammatory it really is even at this point. In general, you kind of chalk up the United States actions in the Middle East over the course of the past, probably going back 100 years, as being one big like cluster F, for lack of a better term. Then you break down the Iraq War versus the Afghanistan War versus any of the other wars. If anything, I would say, from my vague recollection, I think the initial push of the Iraq War was actually quite successful. And I don't feel like even now Iraq failed miserably compared to other attempts. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles has the UK made game Viewfinder winning Europlay 2021, which is, quote, the Eurovision of video games. Although I have never even heard of Europlay, and this has to be a point to point out as far as VideoGameChronicles.com is in that they talked about this when it won a UK award to go on to be the representative in Europlay, but they really didn't talk about any of the competitors. So, like, even here, in this article, as you're looking at it, it's not telling you what the 14 other titles were, whereas you could have definitely had a much better article and much more informative bit of news to say, here is the 13 or I guess 14 other entrants. Let's talk about them. Let's link to them. Let's have 14 articles covering these games. And this news came out incredibly quickly. Like, it was Wednesday that they said it won the UK award, and now on Friday they're saying it won the Eurovision Europlay award. And that's just no way to have a even week-long news narrative that you could easily have had. Whereas comparison to that, any kind of like Game of the Year E3 awards or Gamescom awards, they announced those potential candidates fairly early. They usually ask the audience to vote on it. There's always articles talking about each game and mentioning everything about the games. Usually there's at least a small article about every game. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called The Stone of God, which looks like it's just an RPG game. Doesn't look terrible, but also doesn't look particularly interesting. Kind of feels like it's a girl-only universe. $6.29, English only. There is some irony in the fact that you could easily tell a story where it was all male characters and nobody would probably even notice in most cases. And yet, if you did the exact opposite, it would become very, very noticeable. I guess that heavily comes down to the fact that every society, or almost every society in the United States, almost every society in the world has a kind of male forward presentation. The Amazonians might be about the only society we've ever heard about, and it's questionable how much of those stories are even true. But yeah, the Amazonians are about the only society we've ever even heard about that potentially had a female forward presentation. There are plenty of societies around the world where women are covered up in some way or another, whether it's burqa or just some other form of clothing physically, or just covered up societally, in which they're expected to mostly be in the home, mostly be hidden away. Moving on though. DrDisrespect says he's suing Twitch after being banned from the platform. This is from Video Games Chronicles. I don't know if this is really news. At a certain point, I guess it is slightly news because he is a fairly big and successful streamer, and he is suing Twitch, which theoretically started as a video game platform, but arguably is not really that. So, I mean, it is getting very close to the edges of not being news at all, or just not being video game news and being more a legal bit of news. Okay.
The uncharted desert awaits.
We hit that with a strike, and then you hit that with a strike, and then you hit that. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has the Halo Xbox Series X is already sold out and being listed on eBay for $1,000 plus. This is definitely a problem that keeps happening as far as scalping and resellers in general. But I don't really even know the solution here. It's like, at one point you have a push by big corporations and oligarchs to want to be the only ones that could possibly profit and sell something. And the idea in general of just trying to get rid of the legal right to resell any product and make any kind of profit. On the other hand, you have what people would clearly describe as price gouging.
Unable to compute.
But is price gouging really an issue if it's not, if it's a want and not a need? Like, nobody needs to own the Halo Xbox Series X.
Salvation.
That is definitely a want, and I think at that point you probably should just say buyer beware, for lack of a better system, and just let the people buy it quickly and resell it just fine. The only thing I guess you could complain about or at least since I don't have a better solution or suggestion, would be the only thing you could complain about is Microsoft is not serving its customer very well by not implementing enough of a system to prevent resellers, and eBay does not service its customers very well in the sense that it does not I don't even think I'm supposed to be playing Bloodcraft. It doesn't ensure that people aren't scamming or marking things up at ridiculous prices. There could easily be a system where everything just has a specific price range on eBay, and you cannot go above that specific price range without having a history of being very well received on similar sales or similarly priced items. That way, a brand new eBay account can only list a Xbox Series X for, say, 50% markup over what the suggested retail price is, and then if it has a lot of, say, 1,000 positive reviews on sales for similarly priced items, then it can start to move up its prices. At a certain point, that's eBay price fixing, and maybe that's illegal too, but that's kind of what it needs to be a better service. And yeah, even if Microsoft does have a perfect system, a perfect like random lottery system, you reserve, you sign up to potentially reserve and buy a Series X. By them making it limited in the first place, you kind of know this was always going to be a problem.
Tenacity will exterminate you,
So,
melt under my touch.
yeah, I don't know if there's really a way to ever fix that. Video Games Chronicle has an article. The Epic Games Store next free title has been announced. It will be Yoku's Island Express. Will be replaced Automata Chef and Saints Row the Third Remastered, which is Yoko game, is definitely one that I've kept an eye on to try and figure out whether I actually want to play it or not. We'll talk about Saints Row. There's quite a decent amount of stuff to talk about when we hit that story. Guess we'll do this.
Excited as I am. Well, are you?
You
And
don't
then
belong
this.
here.
And
Melt
then
under
this.
I'm so excited.
Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Pokemon has backtracked on its decision to roll back some Pokestop distance requirements. 80 meters will be the base interaction radius following player backlash. Which,
Catch you up.
okay. I don't know how many people are still playing Pokemon Go, particularly with the whole pandemic and all, but for the audience that's still there, they should do their very best to not wreck the experience. Well, I guess you just have to play this.
Man of melons and potion
It's
fruit.
just not worth it to
Gonna scoop out your guts.
to not play a card.
I'm so excited.
Video Games Chronicles says a Call of Duty Vanguard alpha trick reportedly shows Activision pulled its logo, which, I mean, comes to a surprise of no one. But
Seek what is not there.
that Activision would have had their logo in the game, and then they had a whole bunch of bad press, so then they very quickly removed the logo from the game. There was obviously no talk or thought to remove the logo before the controversies arose. Let's see. To damage all allies and enemies.
Are you as excited as I am?
Okay, what do we want to do?
Freshness guaranteed.
Hit that, I guess.
You don't
Hit
belong
that.
here. I'm not afraid of the light.
And I
Melt
guess
under
hit
my
that.
touch.
A fitting end.
Okay. Should I evolve something? Probably not.
I'm so excited.
Video Games Chronicle says Ratchet Clank riffs could have easily been done in the PS3, claims the Traveler's Tale founder. He says Insomniac's claim that only the PS5 could pull it off is misleading.
There is not a soul without sin.
As I understand it, they talked way too much about the riffs as an idea because they really are just kind of transition points. Very much like the portals in Portal 1, which was done a long time ago, and notably the portals in Portal 1 worked fine on the orange box on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. So yeah, there is, I think,
Scatter like the blossom.
a point there. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some level of truth to it also, in the sense
By your will, O Lord.
that
Gonna scoop out your guts.
yeah, there's some truth to it, probably, that the portals did need the PlayStation 5, in that they probably had the graphics and some visual effects turned up really high that couldn't have been done with the PS4. But yeah, that's kind of true for almost any aspect of any game, is that the new console, PlayStation 5, could probably do the graphics a little bit better than the PlayStation 4 and allow a few more pixels, a few more polygons to be on screen. I would say the bigger story to take from the Ratchet and Clank games is that it once again was one of those mainstream giant bomb, particularly, but mainstream video game media darling type games that was heavily promoted up until its release, and then completely just disappears from any general conversation.
Check out my fancy footwork. Get ready to fly. Stop.
In a lot of ways, the entire the entirety of the argument is kind of mute and kind of just petty and pointless. Like,
I will rise.
it seems like it really is just stemming from John Barton either having some conflict with Ratchet and Clank's current developers more than anything else.
I wasn't good enough.
And even if it was an earnest conversation, while I'm just skimming the headline and not really reading it, like, all you really have is one programmer potentially knowing how to program or figuring out how to program way better than another programmer, which that kind of happens all the time.
Will rise again.
A flash of metal, a silent night.
Let your soul succumb to the void.
Okay.
No!
See you all next festival.
Interesting. So this is going to restore my health without dealing 6 to my leader. Interesting. So next we have a feature from Video Games Chronicle. They have a hands-on with Martha's Dead. They say it's an extremely dark but compelling mystery, which Video Games Chronicle doesn't have a lot of hands-on or early access type things. I see 2 screenshots here, and you really can't take much from that. So this is kind of a great example of an article not being particularly that useful, and why I tend to not read or follow those. Netflix has started including mobile games as part of its subscriptions in Poland. It's in very, very early days, the streaming service says. So there's 2 mobile games. One is Stranger Things 3 and the other is Stranger Things 1984. And it does seem like it is straight up just the Netflix app is going to be a third app store specifically for Netflix themed games, at least to start with, or Netflix owned games. And yeah, I assume it will just work on Android and maybe nothing else. We could do 3 damage to this, and we couldn't kill that at that point.
Our bonds restored.
Plus 1 in Storm.
What was so reaped.
Well, that's not gonna win. Definitely. Overwatch is changing McCree's name due to the Activision Blizzard harassment lawsuit. The character was named after an employee who left after the wake of the lawsuit. McCree is named after Jesse McCree, who was the lead designer of Diablo 4 also. And I don't know if there's any accusations actually specific to Jesse McCree, or if this is just straight up we're removing names of people because they left the company and didn't stand by the company, because it may very well be that this is Activision Blizzard being petty and removing the names of people because they left the company. Because like, you got to be real careful here. It would be very easy to misinterpret or misconstrue this to say that Jesse McCree was guilty of something, when he may very well have just left the company because he didn't want to deal with all the nonsense that's happening around there. A lot of people are very obsessive and anal retentive about just wanting to do their job I don't even know if you call it obsessive or anal retentive, really. A lot of people just want to do their job in a job, and they don't want to have to deal with nonsense and petty, like, high school shenanigans happening. And so if you had been insulated from that somehow and worked in one small office where there was no kinds of harassment going on at all, and it was just like a really good place to work, and then all of a sudden you find out your parent company is just full of abusers and that your name's going to get dragged in the mud, and every conversation about with any potential future employer is going to center around that. Getting out does seem to make a lot of sense for people. Now, I would argue that it was a mistake in the first place to let Jesse McCree name a character after himself. That smacks of egotism in the first place and arrogance, but it also is just not a good move legally, because like you can't own the copyright or own a trademark to a name of a character if that name is based off another person. Yeah. So I would have said it looked bad at the very least, and would have obviously looked bad at the very least before even any of the other issues had appeared. Moving on, Saints Row Reboot is dividing fans as Volition says it won't back down. The new game's reveal trailer currently has more dislikes than likes on YouTube. Part of the complaint I heard, and I haven't been paying much attention of this, was that it was CGI. And people were probably disliking it because of that. Let's see. Instead of seeing actual potential gameplay. See, yeah, this does feel very CGI-ish. So, yeah, this feels like an animated cartoon, and unless the game actually looks like that. There's very little purple going on here, and they're introducing this like orange, I guess, side gang. A little bit of purple. And a little bit of silliness. You have this girl with glasses, which that's a fetish for some Japanese anime characters. They like the dark-haired girl with glasses style. Then you have a different girl here. You will have a custom character creator, and so maybe it feels a little off that you're that they're highlighting specific characters so much, particularly knowing that the fun characters that do show up in Saints Row tend to be very over the top and very ridiculous. Where this kind of feels a little serious. There was, I think, maybe some complaint that this girl was the main girl, or at least there was complaints that there were complaints. Maybe those complaints weren't real. That it was a female lead character. I don't see that. I don't see a legitimate reason this early on to complain about that. What I could say, though, is the Saints Row series is in a very awkward position, to say the least. Because what they did is they started with a fairly generic but good GTA ripoff. and by the time you're at Saints Row 3 or Saints Row Get Out of Hell, you are just so over the top and so ridiculous that there really isn't a lot of room to go further in that direction. So now they're having to bring it back to being realistic, and that probably feels off in the narrative of most people probably only having played Saints Row 3 or Get Out of Hell. It also was a game that notoriously gave giant purple dildo bats to video game journalists, and then also had that giant purple dildo bat on in the game as a silly weapon. And we're not seeing any of that in this trailer. We're not seeing any kind of ridiculousness, and we're not seeing any ridiculous weapons. So it does kind of feel like the new Saints Row reboot from this first trailer feels like it is Saints Row in name only. And then you run into the problem of changing sentimentalities in the fact that I don't know if you can do the jokes and the giant purple dildo bats that once were considered funny enough for the Porky style comedy that it was going for. You're running into a very early form of Duke Nukem Forever, basically, where that comedy I think can be done, but you have to work fairly hard to make it work. And there is definitely a lot of backlash that is going to happen. So yeah, I don't know how you fix that. I really don't know how you fix that. Whereas, let's jump over here. Here is the Get Out of Hell trailer that it suggested, where you have a giant devil and then a smaller succubus in kind of a dress. I think this is a trailer. And in all fairness, this is also a CG trailer. Let's see, suggested. But yeah, here you have, I guess, the titular Gat character. Way more glowing neon purple. Way more ridiculous, like, energy in his arm. Way more ridiculous depictions in general. Yeah. So, yeah. Get Out of Hell, I believe, it was the latest thing. And before Saints Row Reboot, and yeah. That seems weird. That I don't know how you shift the feeling of a game that drastically from one game to the exact next game, or one DLC for the game to the exact next game. Maybe Saints Row Reboot learns from some mistakes as far as GTA Online and Crackdown 3, which is also kind of an over-the-top ridiculous series. But I wouldn't really hold out a lot of hope that the reboot feels much like the Saints Row series. Now, arguably, maybe there isn't that much to the Saints Row series to say or do in the first place. I've never gotten around to playing any of it, in all fairness, so I should mention that. Does this guy?
Such is temperance.
We doing this?
These wheels turn for. Come at me well.
Don't forget to snag some merch.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can do something like Saints Row. I also haven't really played the GTA games, and if I was gonna try and play the GTA games, I kind of want to play GTA 1 as a spotlight, and then play GTA 2 as a spotlight, and then play GTA 3 as the specific thing.
Thus, the world.
Like, this is gonna be crazy, but I think I might be able to pull off a victory here.
The
If we
hunt
do
has only
this,
begun.
Horns also make good weapons.
and then we do this, and then this, and then we play this. If he can do 2 damage to me, I lose. If I can attack next turn with this, I win. Otherwise, I need to basically do 1 damage.
Life deserves a precious death. How's this for a transformation?
Don't make me think.
Yep.
More jewels, more. Raise the price.
See, evolve this follower, give +2 to any other allied followers.
Ready?
Here goes into the blue and beyond.
Let's just hope that this
Don't limit
works.
my sight. Astral Hauser.
And can we evolve anything? No.
I'll strike
So you
true.
like attack here.
Thank you so much for that.
That does nothing. Ooh, but I can attack again. But then we just tie.
Nice marksmanship.
Which tie means I lose. Interesting. Let's see. Moving on. Video Games Chronicle has a review for No More Heroes 3. It's a faithful follow-up, it says, for better or worse. Pseudo51 has said that the No More Heroes series is over. It's been, I guess, 11 years since No More Heroes 2 came out.
Ruler of the sky.
I could definitely see being done with the series because there's not like a lot around the concept in the first place. A best case scenario, what is this trailer? This is not anything to do with No More Heroes. Oh yes, this was the initial announcement of No More Heroes, making it look like an anime. Yeah, just kind of a surprise twist announcement that didn't reveal itself until the very end. Yeah, there wasn't a lot around that, and the concept itself was built around the Wiimote, which, yeah, without the Wiimote, the concept kind of falls apart. What I think would be much better suited for Pseudo51 is for him to take his sentimentality and his form of humor and storytelling and refocus it into more modern gameplay mechanics. Grasshopper, the company that works on it, definitely could do better learning how to make games that actually work with modern controllers well and make things better animated. You don't need Travis Touchdown as a character. You don't need any of the enemies that mostly all got killed as characters. You can make a whole new collection of other characters. I mean, all of them were kind of cliched parodies of stereotypes anyways. There is definitely a danger that the overt anime-esque sexuality of some of the jokes and characters in the No More Heroes series are getting censored, and there might be some sentiment around the idea that they just can't make games like that, or they can't sell games like that anymore. No More Heroes kind of feels a lot like a budget Yakuza game, whereas now maybe it doesn't really need, there doesn't need to be a budget Yakuza game, because even the indies can make a decently sized Yakuza game. Also, No More Heroes tended to have some grindiness in it. At least the first game did. Maybe the second game, which I never played. There is definitely still a question as to, is No More Heroes 1, 2, and 3 actually playable on PC? I'd like to go back and play them all, but even in that, I would try to have an abridged story. It really is one of those games that would really do well as an abridged story. It would do well as a Final Fantasy IV style reboot, and maybe we'll start to see more Final Fantasy reboot style reboots happening. It wasn't Final Fantasy IV that they're rebooting. It's either 7 or 13 that they're rebooting. I think it might be 13. But yeah, just rebooting things and changing things on the way, making a more abridged experience, getting away from the grindiness, I think does have certainly an appeal to the West. And as far as reviews from websites like Video Game Chronicles, I don't want to get back into the habit of saying, like, this is 3 out of 5 stars, and then reading that the negatives are the open worlds are still dull and barren, and some more eccentric moments don't quite hit like they used to. Yeah, changing sentimentality again. It really is just like the same issue, certainly with a Saints Row reboot, is that the 90s edgy gamer bro and Porky style college frat boy mentality is just not acceptable. Even if you're not a part of that mentality, it's become less acceptable to even enjoy that mentality from a distance. Because yeah, I would never consider myself a college frat boy style person, but I can certainly look at somebody and laugh at that person more than laugh with that person for their ridiculous shenanigans. But also, I saw those things, the college frat boy mentality, I saw those things on movies like Porky's, where it's not real and it's exaggerated and it's done in a safe way. If I had been seeing those things in front of my face when I was in school, with actual college frat boys sneaking into a shower and peeking through a hole, A, that would be ridiculously pathetic, but B, I would definitely have felt different about it. And I definitely would feel even more different about it now than even then.
I never get a chance to speak. I see something.
So yeah, I think a new Pseudo 51 series definitely sounds more interesting, assuming he is going to make a new Pseudo 51 series. Of course, I think Pseudo 51 also had the Deadly Premonition series. So, like, every game he's ever made has been really weird, and new weird is good, but I'd like to see whatever he makes actually be good too. Like, every Pseudo 51 game tends to also have that caveat of, oh, it's weird and it's fun because it's weird, but then it's also terrible because they don't know how to program games. Like, I'd like to see potentially an angel investor type foundation just give a couple $1 million to them to hire low-level employees who can just make the games actually playable, and just let Pseudo 51 be very much like Edmund McMillan is with The Binding of Isaac, where he does no programming at all and he just throws out the ideas and the ideas get implemented. Of course, that's hard to pull off without having somebody throw out a bunch of ideas and then it becoming a quagmire to figure out how to actually execute on those ideas. Moving on, we're not getting through the news very fast today. An EA exec says toxic environments are inevitable inside large publishers. Quote, but you have to take action. We have had to take some significant actions and dismiss employees over the last several years, which is kind of a no duh. It would be really weird if you hadn't fired somebody for something. Inevitable is a bad word to use in most cases. I don't agree that large publishers just inevitably have to become toxic environments. If that is true, let's just take it as truth. Then all you're really making an argument for is all big business should be illegal. Which, okay, I'll buy into that argument. No more large publishers. All publishers must be limited down to less than 1,000 employees and less than $1 billion in total gross revenue. All else has to be split off into its own separate company. That works fine. That works perfectly fine for me. Toxic environments are not inevitable, though. Let's just be honest here. They are not. People choose to be crappy to people. Businesses are run and made up of people. We have yet to get to the point where we have AIs running corporations, and the AIs are intentionally making the environments toxic. Human beings, as limited as they might be in many, many other factors, do have the capability to be silent or not be crappy. So, yeah. And there's nothing stopping any corporation, regardless of whatever late-stage capitalism religion they preach, there's nothing stopping a corporation from making no profit, just breaking even, so that they can spend more money of their profit or more time of their job to ensure that the experience is not and then have a toxic experience for the workers. What do I want to play? I guess we just start with that. Let's see. Metroid Dread, I'm not going to show it, but it has a 2-minute trailer introducing a new foe. I guess I have to just assume that Metroid Dread is actually going to get released. Because like it probably is just locked down and ready to be close to ready to be released right now. They don't obviously want to have another scenario where you have Metroid Prime 3 announced and then stuck in development hell and then just not mentioned at all for several years. But they also kind of have to have something called Metroid Prime 3 come out. because they're Nintendo and it's just too much of a blow to their own namesake if something doesn't come out.
My
But
domain
that,
reaches to the ends of the skies.
let's see. Video Games Chronicle has this article we already talked about. No More Heroes series is over. Its creator says, quote, "Goodbye, Travis Touchdown." Almost certainly by the third game he dies. Like that's what you would want to have happen, is that he would die in a fairly definitive way, and you wouldn't want to then send him to hell or heaven or something like that. You would just kind of want it to end. But I think part of the problem also with the No More Heroes series is it has the power creep issue, in that you're fighting galactic enemies. So at a certain point you're going down the path of Dragon Ball, where after you've fought the best, most strongest fighters in all the universe, then they're having to fight gods, and then they're having to introduce other gods that are even more powerful than the current gods. It's just constantly power creeping and power creeping and power creeping because of that.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
Hey, let's play.
Let's see.
I'll strike true.
And then I guess we'll
The hunt has only begun.
evolve this and clash some people up.
Game. One helping of this and it's nighty night for you.
What is this weird feeling?
And then we have a Video Games Chronicles article that was later. New Saints Row video offers a look at actual gameplay following fan criticism. Volition gives players a proper first look at the game in action. Which, yeah, okay. Let's see what that looks like.
Bang, bang.
See, there is a noticeable amount of dislike of anyone of brown skin tint at all. And it's not just Western racists. It's not just people in the United States or anything. There's like significant backlash and push that I see on all forms of websites whenever anyone is identified, whether self-identified or other, as being brown-skinned of any sort. So there might be some small part of that. There, you saw the door open and you see a whole bunch of white guys. There might be a little bit of white guilt going on here. But also, you kind of have a weird thing about gangs, in particular, being built around races. So, and here you got a guy with a man bun. So, yeah. This seems like this is going to be set more in a, like, southern area, New Mexico, Texas type. I guess if that's Route 66, that'd be New Mexico type area. Which might explain a different layout of the group of the Saints Rows, and the Saints in general tend to expand. I would have assumed with the purple and the name the Saints, they were all from like New Orleans originally, and they were going from that New Orleans thought, and there is a decent amount of African Americans in New Orleans. So yeah, I could see some of that. In a lot of ways, the green and purple just kind of feels like they're Joker henchmen, and that this is a concept stealing from Joker's color palette.
Firing dragon breath runs.
There's a lot of talking to the screen. Obviously, they did not have a lot of in-game content. But I would say you're probably getting at most 20% of the dislikes are just blatant, unabashed racism, if even that much. This looks much more like a Saints Row game for the small points it's showing. And if anything, I think they're establishing a bit more of a story than really was focused on in Saints Row 2 or Saints Row 3, where there are rival gangs. And I imagine there will be some cool cutscenes and all, but the running and gunning is kind of the central part of the character. Now, this lady is probably the voice actor as well as the face model. So, if she is going to be your main point of interaction, even if you're not playing as her, her performance is going to kind of drastically change people's reception as far as how the game goes, or how the reception of the game goes. But yeah, I would say I feel like that secondary trailer is way better, way better at showing off what I think people who play Saints Row want, as someone who hasn't played Saints Row. But I also have to caveat that with saying I have no clue.
This one's for
Like,
my
really,
family.
no clue at all
Come on.
as far as what Saints Row players really want, even if there is kind of I really am not certain there is even a large community of Saints Row players. It may very well be a case that any audience for the Saints Row series has long since dispersed and dried up and moved on to other games and are just not going to come back to Saints Row. Saints Row in particular, if I vaguely recall, was added and became popular because it was on the Xbox or the PlayStation, I think the Xbox, at a time when Grand Theft Auto was only on PC. And so now that GTA, even though there isn't a new GTA, is on every platform, I think it's on the Switch even, there may not be a market for a Saints Row series. Moving on, Call of Duty's Vanguard alpha test is now live for PlayStation owners, if you're interested in that. Famitsu has the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga launching in spring of 2022. I think we had already talked about that. We can see that there are studs here. We can see that there are minifigs here. We can see that the CG looks interesting. If anything, I think what you can see here is there is kind of a dark line around the hand and a dark line around the hand here. And what that implies to me is that they have either done some really deep level 3D scanning of minifigs to make them look a lot more like minifigs with details on them than they did in the past. And then you can see like mud on the feet because they're in the mud, so they're adding effects to have these minifig characters actually look like minifig characters. The hair here also low polygon because a minifig's head would be low polygon. And then you see actual Lego pieces connecting to Lego pieces here. Of course, I am more from the perspective that I would much prefer to see improved performance over anything else as far as the Lego Star Wars games. Like, I'm not really looking for a ton of new features as they remake them. And I'm not really looking for a ton of improved graphics. I just want good performance. This is going to have the running and gunning stuff that definitely wasn't in the Lego Lego Star Wars game, since that was the first game in this Lego series. It's probably going to have some more lightsaber battles. Seems like it's going to have some space missions, but I bet that you see a lot less racing and space missions in the reboot than you did in the previous game. We may see less studs. You may see less grind. Things may just be cheaper. Particularly for the Lego Star Wars universe, there was actually a limit on how many studs you can get, whereas like Lego Batman 3, I got up to like 10 billion studs because of the score and stud multipliers. But there was like a 2 billion limit in the first game, and yeah, I could see